In an earlier video, we added a visual to the dashboard page, which was a slicer. I'm going to go back to dashboard, just at the bottom here. And this is the slicer here that we added, and we used this particular visual called a slicer. And the type of slicer that we added was a drop-down slicer. Now the drop-down slicer allows us to choose a year. And when we choose a year, this affects the values that we see in the cards. So 2025 will give us quite different values to 2015. And I'll put it back to 2020. Now I want this slicer to appear on all of my pages in this report. And I want to make it that if I choose a particular year or selection of years in this slicer, that it then syncs that slicer with the other pages. To do this, what we do is click on the slicer, and on the View tab, there's a button called Sync Slices. Now I could go through and just tick what pages I want to show the slicer and what pages I want to sync the slicer, if it was just certain ones. But if I choose this option at the top, it'll tick everything. And so I really want to add and sync with all of the pages. So I need to make sure all of these ticks are ticked. So now when I go to population, there's the slicer, and there, and there, and there, and there. And notice on every single page it's showing 2020. So I'm now showing the slicer because of this option here. I'm now, with this eye, I'm showing the slicer on all of these pages, and I'm synchronizing with this option on all the pages. And if I expand the advanced option, what these two ticks do is if I was to change the slicer in any way in terms of its field, it would synchronize with all the pages. And if I was to change the filter, that is the year I'm seeing, it would filter through all the other pages. So that's a really handy thing to be able to do. So I'm just going to close that. Now with population, because I already had some visuals on population, I'm going to have to do some jigging to make them all fit. So I'm just going to bring this table down a little bit so that that slicer can easily be worked with on the population page. So do think about whether you want to synchronize your slicer or slicers across pages. Now, speaking of pages, this particular page, population, is really focused on Europe. And that's because the filters pane here has got the continent Europe chosen. So I really need to double click and rename this page, Population Europe. Now I actually need a page for Population Asia. So I want to duplicate this particular page. So I right click and I duplicate the page. And there's the duplicate there. I can then drag it and just pop it to the right of Population Europe. Then I'll double click its name and I'm going to change it to Population Asia. And what I now need to do is edit the text box at the top so that it shows Asia population. And I also need to change the continent filter card that it's not Europe, but in fact it's Asia. And so now I can see that these are my Asian countries showing on my table. I can see that this is my Asian map. And also I can see that I've got Asia here showing as my decomposition tree. If I actually want to show my Asian countries, then I just double click Asia in my decomposition tree, and that will show me all the countries that fall into the Asian continent. And so that's that page set up. Now, what if I now want to create a page for my next continent, which is going to be Africa? I right click Population Asia, I duplicate the page, I drag it into position, I double click it, and I rename it Population Africa. I edit my text box at the top, Africa. I then change my continent card to not show me Asia, but in fact Africa. And I double click Africa in my decomposition tree so that I can actually see the African countries in my decomposition tree. I then click somewhere and that's that page made. Now I need to show Oceania, so I'm going to right click, duplicate the page, move it into position, double click, rename it Population Oceania. Edit the text box. Ooh, now it's stretched the text box. And there's a little bit of competition here for space. So I'm just resizing so that oh, hang on. I'm just going to resize it this way. and that should be Oceania population. I can actually bring that back. Just go back and check Africa. Yeah, that needs to be, I've accidentally pressed enter, so I need to backspace the enter out. So there's Africa, Oceania, and then I just need to change my continent from Africa to Oceania. I need to then double click Oceania here, so it shows me all my countries. And again, you may have to move some of these things around to get them to sit nicely together. So I could actually just move that a little bit, move that a little bit, and try to get them to work nicely with each other. Okay. Lastly, I need the Americas. So I'm going to duplicate the page. I'm going to move it into position, double click its name, and we've got population, Americas. Change the heading in the text box, Americas, and change the filter card to not have Oceania, but instead have North America and South America. Close that, double click North, double click South, and there is my South America there. Or I can click North America if I want to see that. And that's my pages made. So you can duplicate your pages, saves you an awful lot of development. Instead of designing each page from scratch, you can actually duplicate a page, move between your pages, and saves an awful lot of time. And then just customize the filtering. You may notice if I've gone back to the dashboard that I have a whole lot more pages now showing in my page navigator, which we made earlier. So I just give that a bit of a stretch, and so I can easily hold the control key and click to go to any particular page, control click the back button to go back, and so on and so forth.